Hello, my friends. Haven't done this in a long time, but felt like I needed to do a little short video. Um, I know I'm kind of rough looking. I got my work hat on. I've been working, but I felt like I needed to say a few things and to inform you of a few matters that are happening, especially with Rick Kerber and his case. It's an atrocity, and I've seen it develop for a long time now. So I know a lot of the details, a lot of things that have happened in his case that need light shed on it. And I am not going to completely do that right now. I'm going to only take a few minutes, but wanted to just get this out there. So when I was first arrested, Rick Kerber ended up contacting me. He went to the Refuge and before, and I was not able to talk to him. Anyway, ended up talking to him when I was first incarcerated, and he began to, help me in any way he can. He was very considerate. Many times, I felt like Rick emotionally saved my life, and it was just so hard to be in those prisons. And Rick, gave me hope, and he convinced me that he was going to fight and fight for me. And he was communicating. He was my liaison, and he was helping Lisa and the kids, and doing all he could. And I understood quickly what kind of heart Rick Kerber had, and the amount of sacrifice that he would make for his fellow man. So we went through that process, and he did basically sacrifice his entire life while we went through trial in Oregon, and we won. Another figure that was extremely impactful in my trial was my attorney, Marcus Mumford. And as many of you know, just minutes after I was acquitted, fully acquitted by a jury, my attorney, Marcus Mumford, was tased in the courtroom. And I've put a link in the notes here where you can click on that and listen to his description of why he was tased. But ultimately, the marshals were upset with him, the prosecutors and all those who basically hold a tremendous amount of power in the courtroom and in our judicial system and in our country were upset with myself, but also with Marcus Mumford and Morgan Philpott and Rick Kerber for defending me, truly defending me in the courtroom and getting the truth to the jury, and so that the jury could see and make a decision. And the jury decided, all 12 of them, that myself and those with me were not guilty on all charges, and I was acquitted. And so they took the opportunity, the marshals, and they surrounded Marcus Mumford right in the courtroom and threw him to the ground and tased him, and then arrested him. Shortly after that, they found out that Rick Kerber, was involved and influential in getting my release and or I shouldn't say my release, but my acquittal, and basically defending me and getting the truth out there. And Rick's case that he is in jail right now for, previous to my trial, Rick's case had been dismissed. And dismissed on, guess what? A speedy trial violations and prosecutorial misconduct by the prosecutors. So it had been dismissed by a judge, but it wasn't dismissed with prejudice. So as soon as the prosecutors found out that Rick was involved in my case, guess what they did? They re-indicted him. For at this time, this isn't the first time he's been re-indicted. But it needs to be clear that his case was dismissed by a judge. And he was re-indicted by these prosecutors that have been so vindictive in trying to destroy him once they found out of his involvement in my case. So then they went after Marcus Mumford legally, trying to take his license away, prosecuting him. And ultimately it was decided that Marcus would never practice in Oregon again, and they kind of backed away. And, well, they didn't back away, but they basically signed an agreement, and he basically can't practice in Oregon anymore. And I asked the question, why? Because he was willing to defend the innocent in court, because he wouldn't comply and go along with what the judge and the prosecutors and the U.S. Attorney's Office was trying to do, which is they were just trying to take myself, my brother, my friends, and march us to the gallows. That's what they were trying to do. And Marcus Mumford and Rick Kerber said no, and Morgan Philpott said no. And they actually defended me, which is hard to do in their world, in that courtroom. But they put themselves at great risk. And because of that, they suffered. They've suffered tremendously because of me, because they were willing to defend me, my brother, and many others. And they got an acquittal. And these people are upset about it. And they have gone after Marcus. They've gone after Morgan. They've gone after Rick. They've gone after so many others because they did not get their way. And the same thing happened in Nevada. Now, after Rick's first trial, just so you know, the whole reason why Marcus Mumford was brought into my case is because he was Rick's attorney. And he'd been Rick's attorney for several years. And after Rick's first trial, now this was, I think 8 or 9 years since they had indicted Rick, they got a hung jury. So a jury decided, it was split. They couldn't decide whether Rick was guilty or not. Well, the prosecutors decided to retry Rick. But they wanted to retry Rick without Marcus Mumford because he's a good attorney and he truly defends and he just won't go with the flow. So what did they do? They take and they force Marcus Mumford to, I don't know the right wordage, but basically resign from Rick's case. And the way they did that was they said, because of your involvement in Oregon and all that happened there, we will deem you, Marcus Mumford, as, listen to this, a threat to public safety because you will not comply in the courtroom and because you are defending these certain people and allowing them to get out. Now, I paraphrase that. I have the actual documents, or I'm getting them, but there is an actual letter that they wrote to Marcus that says that we will deem you as a threat to public safety if you do not recuse yourself from Rick Kerber's case. And then they forced public defenders on Rick. Okay, public defenders, I mean, don't get me wrong, but basically they bat for the same team, right? They're held under that. They get their paycheck from the federal government, and most of the time they just do not have the gumption and the ability and the will to buck the system that's signing their paycheck. And so now Rick has to go into the next trial with public defenders. And I personally don't think that that's a good situation to be in. Because when it comes down to the judge in the courtroom saying that you will do this, you will not put this evidence in front of the jury, you will not do this, public defenders will just back away. But a good defender like Marcus Mumford will not. He will still push. He will do all he can to get the truth in front of the jury so the jury can make an honest and true decision. But in Rick's case, that never happened. And the public defenders discouraged Rick from taking the stand. They kind of convinced Rick that this is in the bag, that there's no way that the jury is going to convict, but that's what happened. They got a conviction. But there was tactics being used that I've mentioned earlier, which is called, motions of limine, which basically is the prosecutor's way of telling their own narrative. They basically eliminate the evidence that the defenders, the defenders can, the defendants can bring to the jury, can present to the jury, and that's how they got a conviction on Rick. They did not let him present the evidence to the jury that Rick wanted, and the public defenders just didn't do a very good job at fighting that fight. So, that's what is happening here. And now you've got a judge, and his name is Paul Warren, and he has had a vendetta against Rick from the very beginning. And remember, Rick's case started when, and we'll go into detail this, and I'll document this and get it all laid out, but Rick went against the Republican Party in Utah. When John McCain was running, he had John McCain speak at one of his free capitalist, meetings, I guess. Rick was pretty powerful. He could raise $200,000-$300,000 a night for a candidate, because Rick had the ability to do that, and the people that were part of this free capitalist group had the ability to do that. So the Republican Party wanted Rick and this free capitalist group to be in their pockets. Well, Rick was so disgusted with John McCain's, agenda and his thoughts and his political ideas that he decided he could not support John McCain. Well, the Republican Party resented that, and there was actions that were trying to take to push their way into Rick's organization, and Rick, basically pushed back. Well, it was just right after that the U.S. prosecutors, who is controlled basically by the Republican Party in the state of Utah, indicted Rick on false charges, on garbage charges. And Rick thought, this is a joke. I'll be able to, take care of this in just months. And now it has been almost 10 years. Their life has been hell for 10 years. Just like Joel, his beautiful wife, said to me today, we're still stuck back in 2006. We can't move on. They've been prosecuting and going after our family since 2006. And they've just continued to try him and to indict him after hung juries and dismissals and all of that. They just continue until they finally, after 10 years, got a jury. After eliminating all the evidence, they finally got a jury to see it their way. This is not justice, and it's not okay. And I call out Paul Warren. Just like you said when you were given the the position after 17 years as a federal prosecutor. Judge Warren, you were once the longest serving U.S. attorney in the nation. You said yourself, making the shift from prosecutor and advocate to an impartial judge is a challenge. And I say to you now, Judge, it is a challenge. And you're not meeting that challenge very well. Because Rick Kerber is something completely different than what you've casted him at, than what the media has casted him at. And there must be justice. You cannot get away with doing what you've been doing. You cannot. And there has to be, some justice here. You need to let Rick go home, back to his family. And a lot of people here are seeing it, seeing the light being shed on Rick Kerber's case, and will continue to shed it. And That's all I've got to say for now. Until next time, my friends, thank you. Have a good evening.